Good morning. Greetings from the nightmarish hellscape of North Carolina. Count your blessings that you get to stay in the Edenic paradise of Texas. Anyway, so I thought that I would finally actually get another one of these videos made. So I'm going to go through kind of the syllabus now, course description, stuff like that. And as you can probably tell, it's early for me, so this is going to be really badly done. Just Yeah, this happens when you're teaching from a hotel room. Um, so, Syllabus, you can just look down through it since you will have gotten it in an email that I sent you earlier on. It's got pretty much the standard stuff: room number, time, my email address, br19@texasstate.edu. Departmental phone number, that's only for if you really have an emergency. I'm not the one at that desk. That's not the phone number for the office that they have me in. So that's not really all that useful, but they have it on their standard syllabus, so here it is. Office hours are going to be middle and frequent this semester. I'm going to be in there for an hour on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and then about 4.5 hours on Wednesdays. And you can also make appointments, or we could go by Skype or something like that if none of these times are any good for you. I've just been actually studying factors that correlate to students actually learning stuff, and it turns out that one of the big things is contact with professors outside of class. So apparently it's a good idea to come by and talk with your professors outside of class. Who knew? The catalog course description is just taken from the course catalog. I corrected Texas State's grammar a little bit, which I'm wont to do, but it's kind of generic, and it defines what in most universities would be called a contemporary moral problems class, which is going to be a problem that hits a bunch of hot-button social or political issues like, say, gay marriage and abortion and gun control and the death penalty and things like that. But it allows a lot of scope for different instructors to teach different particular topics, and I've taken full advantage of that scope, as you can see with the specific description that I have. My thought on a contemporary moral problems class is it's probably the only kind of ethics or practical decision-making class you're ever going to have. And I think, well, how often do you make a decision based on the death penalty? Right? I mean, even in Texas, most of us don't have jobs as executioners, so it's not like a day-to-day thing for us. Right, so it makes a little bit of a difference when you're voting, if you vote. So, it's a marginal effect on a couple of decisions every 2 to 4 years. It's not really that big a deal in our lives, right? It is an important political issue, but it's not an issue that most people really need to make the right decision about, right? What you need to make right decisions about are the situations you actually find yourself in. And so that's why it is that I picked the specific topics that you can see in the specific description there. We're going to do a bunch of business ethics, how you can relate to labor, work, business, marketplaces, money, things like that. Sexual ethics, how you relate to your body, to people of the opposite sex, romance, sex in general, which in my opinion is something that 18 to 20-year-olds probably could use some explicit thought about. I don't mean moral instruction or a bunch of rules or something like that, but could stand to have some time spent in explicit reflection on the ethics of sexuality, because I think a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds are making horrible mistakes of one kind or another with their sex lives, which they might not make just if they were reflective. So we're going to spend a bunch of time on philosophy of sex. And then, we find ourselves, as you can immediately tell, completely surrounded and inundated by and immersed in technology, right? I have my iPhone here, and I forgot to bring my adapter with it to North Carolina, so I got this thing in the airport, and you'd think, well, Ryan, why did you spend $30 on this thing? And it's because if my phone runs out of power while I'm up here, I will be completely lost. I'm utterly dependent on this phone. Now, it's ordinary for human beings to be dependent on technology, because where would we be without fire? But this is a piece of technology that didn't exist at all 5 years ago. The rate of change and the depth to which technology has penetrated our consciousness, and if you have, say, glasses or a pacemaker, the degree to which it's penetrated our bodies is really getting profound. And nowadays we eat genetically engineered crops. That's a profound difference between the kinds of technologies that we have nowadays and the kinds of technologies that existed a couple of hundred years ago. So we need to have an understanding of how we need to relate to the technology that surrounds us. So we're going to have a unit on philosophy of technology, the ethics of how to deal with technology. So that's why it is that I've gone with the topics that we're going with in this class. The departmental learning outcomes are written by the department. They kind of mean that you'll be better at like stuff and stuff. So let me talk through the assignments here. All right, so I've got about 20 pages of writing for you this semester, and this is with the stuff I've been reading about what correlates with students actually learning stuff. That is apparently the threshold beyond which students are actually learning things. And most students don't apparently have to do that much writing anymore, so we're going to go with about 20 pages of writing. That's going to be in the form of a whole bunch of quizzes. Who knows what those will be? I don't know what those will be yet. They might be things that I send you at home. They might be short papers that I assign you by email. They might be pop quizzes in class. They could be trivia. They could be a Halloween costume contest. There's really just no way of knowing. On the other hand, when it comes to the other assignments, you'll have plenty of advance notice. The short papers are going to be worth 12 points each. Those are going to be about 3 pages. I'm going to give you the topics for those well in advance. You are welcome to come up with topics of your own. You're going to have to run those past me so that I can make sure they're suitable, but that would be a great idea. The first one you already have, that one is due early. It's due next Thursday because I wanted to go ahead and get started quickly on that. And plus, I think you can probably tell that the point of that particular assignment is to get you to thinking about what's going on this semester in the situation that you actually find yourself in. The final exam is going to be worth 15 points. That's just going to be during the final exam period. I'll give you a review sheet for that well in advance. You will know pretty much exactly what's going to be on it. You're going to have to do some serious thinking to prepare for it, and you're going to have to do some more serious thinking during the test, but it's not going to be serious thinking to remember what the guy said on page 78 in the third paragraph or something like that. No, nothing shocking or surprising or pointless. And then there's going to be a medium length paper worth 25 points, and that's due during a variable period. So that's all going to add up to 100 points, and the way that I'm going to take your grade is I'm going to just add those together, and that's going to give me a score out of 100. And then about the top third of you in terms of score are going to get an A, about the middle third are going to get a B, and about the bottom third are going to get a C. D's or F's typically require that you plagiarize, that you not turn in a major assignment, or that you just display a really remarkable failure to be up with what the rest of your peers in the class are doing. So D's and F's are pretty rare as long as you actually do everything. I mean, they can happen to anybody, but they don't usually. And that grade curve is based on what I understand to be a pretty standard grade curve for most classes of this type at most colleges and universities pretty much everywhere in the country. It could be better or worse. I mean, if I get impressed with your class and I think you guys are a bunch of complete geniuses, there could be more A's and fewer C's. On the other hand, if I think that you're a bunch of complete dullards, there could be more C's and fewer A's. I've had both of those, but not very often. Most of the time, I've stuck with this kind of standard grade curve. All right, so to reiterate and clarify, when I said 20 pages and it sounded like that was all quizzes, it's not. That is 4 papers of about 3 pages each for 12 pages. Medium papers about 5 pages, that's 17. And we're going to say that quizzes and the final exam and stuff, that's probably going to be about 3 pages of writing. So if you are ever asked by somebody who does social science research whether you took a class that required 20 pages of writing in a semester, you can pretty honestly say, yes, you did this semester. So here's going to be stuff for how to turn in those papers. And apparently these instructions confuse some people. I think they're pretty easy. So let me try to clarify this for you. All right, so here are the due dates for the short papers. September 1st, which is next Thursday, September 29th, November 1st, and December 1st. So it's basically a month apart. Coincidentally, none of them happen to fall in the middle of October. Pretty straightforward. The longer paper, I'm giving you a variable period to turn it in during. Any time between October 13th and November 15th is going to be completely fine. All right, I'm going to have you turn in your papers by email. And if you're in my 330 class, not the 5 class, but the 330 class, your paper wants to come attached to an email that looks like this. It's going to be the number 1, which is an arbitrary identifier for your class, your last name, your first initial, the number of the paper. That's the entire subject line. Nothing else should show up in it. So if I were in that class, my first paper would come in attached to an email. The email's heading would be 1, because I'm in that class, register, because that's my last name, B, because that's my first initial, 1, because that's the number of the paper. The document itself, which is going to come in as an attachment to the email, is not going to be the body of the email. It's going to be an attachment. It needs to have the same title, plus, of course, the file type will be affixed. So my first paper would be 1 register B1, and then since I use a recent version of Microsoft Word, it would be .docx. That file type can be any of many things, but it has to be something that I can open and manipulate in Microsoft Word. The way that I grade is by opening papers in Microsoft Word using its track changes function to put in edits and comments and kibitzes and stuff like that. And then I will send it back to you with the same file name, except it'll have my initials BR between the number of the paper and the file type. So I would send back to myself 1 register B1 BR.docx. If you're in my 5 o'clock class, everything is the same except you have a different arbitrary number at the beginning. It'll be 2 instead of 1. So if I were in that class, my email to myself would be 2 register B1, and the document attached to it would be 2 register B1.docx. Otherwise, it's the same. The long paper is going to be paper number 5. It doesn't matter when you... Here, 5. Doesn't matter when you send that one in. If that one comes in before paper 3, it's still number 5. It's been before paper 4, it's still number 5. Those are all the options. So that one's number 5 no matter what. And here, because I'm just kind of feeling in a pedantic mood, is an arbitrary Latin lesson for if you want to use a few Latin phrases in your papers. A lot of people like to use EG and IE interchangeably. They're not interchangeable. They have completely different meanings. EG is short for the Latin exempli gratia, which means here's a free example for you. It means basically just for example. It would probably be more elegant to use for example, but if you want to go all Latin on me, EG means for example, and it doesn't mean what IE means. IE is from the Latin id est, which means that is to say, or in other words, or something like that. Again, probably better to go with the English, but if you like the Latin, fine, but don't let IE and EG slip back and forth. And it's per SE, say, not per SAY, say. I don't know what that means in Latin, but it's spelled with an SE, not an SAY. And the last thing I'm going to toss in here before I go off to join my grieving family at the Chinese buffet is I don't know why the titles switched fonts every time, but my guess is that it's because Steve Jobs resigned from Apple. I think their software has really gone down in quality in the 16 or 18 hours since he has resigned. So that's why, even though I've set up exactly the same fonts on all the titles, they changed. Have a good day. I'll be back later with some books.